morning, everybody. Good morning to you. Hope everybody's week has been starting out all right. Happy Tuesday. Back on my website here. Going to come back to this. I try to explain the power trend or the power curve as best I could. A little bit with the math. You have Bitcoin's price here. And then really this is the curve that you're supposed to not be able to unsee. All right, and this is when a power trend is plotted in log. And when it's plotted in log, you see a straight line. That's what a power trend does. That's what a power trend looks like. Formula, the basic formula is very simple here. All right. Price is the intercept times the independent variable, in this case time, simply days since the Genesis block, raised to a slope. That slope is pretty close to 6, a little bit under it. I'll come back to this page. I've talked about it a lot. You can see all the metrics here on my site about how the power trend looks, how it's playing out, what we're looking like. And, as I've talked about many times, 125K by year end. And then this is really the amazing column, in my opinion. This is if you would look at prior years' power trends projected until today, what price would it get? And you see really from 2016, not really 2015 and before, because data is more limited. It's trying to sort of figure out a base. But from 2016, we're very close. Certainly we've been over. But from 2016, we're very, very close. Okay? To what today's price actually is. This is just showing you the projections that it would have at those years. Actually, up until those years. Okay? Then again, it's not like anything else we've seen in the financial world. It's not compound growth, consistent growth, straight line on log scale growth. What it is a gentle curve there on log linear. This is log on the left axis here. Linear on the x. And then what you can find is a proportion that represents the curve. And that proportion is 12.8%. So as far as doubling goes, so if the network grows 12.8%, it doubles. Grows 12.8%, it doubles. You pick that any point in the curve, you will get that doubling. That's different than saying something grows at 10% per year. It's just different. I don't want to lecture too much. This is going to be the last stream for me for the week, since I'm going to try to go to Fred's conference in LA, even though it's pretty crazy with airports everywhere in Europe and America these days. I'm going to look here at Apple again versus Bitcoin. All right. Now, you can't immediately tell the difference. All right. We're on linear scale. But what you can sort of see with your eyes, if you just look at this, I hope to make this clear during this stream. If you look at this on a linear scale versus this on a linear scale, which is Bitcoin, notice how the trend lines for Bitcoin are quite gradual. Of course, this one is not. This one's pretty fast, the 100th. It's an extreme level. But all the others, right, are pretty gradual on linear space. And with Apple, you see a sort of a hockey stick. Okay? This phenomenon, of course, it's going to change by the how powerful the trend is, either exponential or power, how big the rate of growth is. But this is, Bitcoin with a power trend has a bigger growth rate at the moment than Apple does all time. But since Apple's continues at that rate, all right, which is 20% or so, I need to actually check the math again. Don't have it off the top of my head. Over the long term, apples will really fly, and you get this sort of hockey stick. But with the Bitcoin power trend, it's very gradual on linear scale. Okay, I'm not looking at this one. I know this, even here you can see it's a more gradual slope. I'm looking at the down arrow, right? The most extreme level. Then here, you can see this is like sort of just moving along in linear space, then whoop, exponential. This is power. It's more sustainable. It's gradual. This is how networks grow. Now let's analyze this a little bit more. I'll get some new charts today, I promise you, but I just want to show you. So now let's put this on log scale on the left. All right. What I actually have is two trends. I'll just take everything off so you can see it here. For Apple, I have a overall long expo trend, which is this dotted line, and I have an evolving short moving into the projected expo trend, which is solid black line. There's definitely more of an art than a science to this, you know, if you look long term, right? So if you look at this dotted line, obviously Apple was above it in the late 80s. Then, you know, the sort of the dark years of Apple before Jobs came back, even though I guess as a true Mac fan, people wouldn't say that. There was still a lot of interesting things they were doing. But with the iPod and everything, they really exploded onto a different level here. And if you take this dotted line, which looks at every single piece of data, pricing data that Apple's had since 1980, let's even take this off. You can see that now we're above this all-time trend. And the all-time trend doesn't really do us much good. All right. In fact, it's quite a bit off. All right. Prices is double at the moment. So what a Jim Simons would do, and again, I have no inside information of their firm, but you know, Renaissance Capital and these really serious quant traders, is they'd start to get a more rolling trend, figure out which is the best R squared, and start to run their analyses based on that. And so here is a better trend. All right, you can see the R squared is better, 98% versus 90, which means specifically it means this black line, the price moves around the solid black line 98% better than the average. It moves around the dotted black line only 90% better than the average. That's what it actually means. In any event, let's stick with this. And of course, at the time, you wouldn't really know, right? You got to kind of see what's happening here to see if we're, you know, building in a new trend. We got a financial crisis here, huge drop, 50% drop in the price, even though it's like extremely small compared to today. Always looks fun to look at split adjusted stock prices. And then we're at a completely different level. So we can see that clearly our all-time trend is our short expo trend, which is the solid black line, is much better. Okay. Now let's take off the long and let's draw some more percentile bands to see kind of where we are. Let's do the 10 and the 90. All right. And let's do, say, the 50 and the 60. Okay. Don't want to put too many bands on here. So as you see, it's pretty rare to fall below the 1 or the 10. Happens, but rare. Didn't even do it during the very scary days. Happens. And I remember talking about this about here, right? 6 months ago or whatever. We were at pretty low levels. Interesting, bounced off. Whatever. Could go back down. I'm not a trader. I'm not acting like I'm an Elliott wave trader or anything else. Just going to show you this is what it looks like. It's not a perfect straight line, but overall, as you sort of develop it, you can clearly see that at a 98% R squared, Apple grows exponentially. So all these Elliott waves or ABC corrections, whatever you see from any trader, even though they might not know it, if they're drawing a channel and it's a straight line on log scale, it's an exponential channel. All right. Doesn't mean that the price has to be on this channel in the future, but it's the best trend line that we have. I played around with the R squared. I think it's pretty good. When did I even start it? Started analyzing in, yeah. Yeah, not arbitrarily, but I did start at the beginning of 2005. Might be able to find a little bit better R squared if I pick somewhere else. Doesn't really matter. It's close enough. So Apple is doing exponential growth. Okay, established. Now let's look at Bitcoin. All right, more gradual rainbows here. Much more gradual than Apple was on linear. All right, and we, whoops, so I gotta pull my, we put it on log scale now, and we get the continuous rainbow. It's not, it's still not a straight line. Got a lot of indicators on here. Let's take them off. Let's look at the 9 and the 1 and the 6 and the 7. All right. You know this chart. I've shown it 1,000 times. You know it. People are really worried. They're really worried from this little short, long squeeze, which seemed to be somehow quite insider traded. But again, I'm not a specialist there. Played very well. Short came in and just ahead of the announcement that Trump made, hundreds of millions were made on this trade. All right, so a little bit disappointing as of when I pulled this into the model. Okay, we're just below my all-time power regression, 4K below it. Okay, we've been above it, but we're 4K below it. Good morning, Daniel. Hope you're very well. So I'm just trying to lock in a little thesis here about the power curve and how maybe build some confidence in it. Okay, and again, this is 96% R squared, extremely good. Extremely good. Which, as I said, is 96% better than the average. The price is moving around this solid black line, 96% better than it would the average of Bitcoin price over time. So that's literally what R squared means. Not as good as Apple's actually on exponential, 98, but yeah, so the point is to compare. Okay, we have one power, both on log scale, with that gentle curve, and then here it's a straight line. I know it's not exact. I'm trying to show you it's the real world, of course, isn't exact. There's always going to be some ups and downs, but once you project out, it looks pretty good. You can clearly see there's a relationship there. All right. Now, whoops, that's not what I wanted to show. Let's try to go back to this idea that we shoehorn Bitcoin into an exponential trend, because a lot of people think that Bitcoin is still exponential. All right. So let's stick with the idea of linear here. You can already see that we're flying with this green line. What is this green line? Is it going to be a power exponential? Of course, it's an exponential curve. All right, so if I take this off, we go back here. And though it certainly looks fast, whoop, lost some pricing data there. Hold on. Always love when I do that on the fly. Let me see what was going on there, and I'll fix it on the fly. More reasons why I just don't have these charts on the site too much. Let me square this away. One second. All right, let's see if this worked. I'm not sure if it did, but should have. Good. All right, here's our, so back to this idea. Remember when I had this? It's another problem with my layout is I got to put it all back when I want to switch log to linear. Hockey stick, exponential looks hockey stick on linear, right? And power, no matter what you want to say about it, it's always going to look a little bit more gradual on linear, okay? Here we go. Let's go back to linear. More gradual. Yes, this one is pretty high, but that's like the most extreme value on power. Gradual rainbow, hockey stick rainbow. Apple's on exponential, as is literally every other financial asset in the world. Bitcoin, so far, without a doubt, is on a power curve. Just no doubt that it's on a power curve. Okay, so now let's look at this a direct comparison. Let's try to shoehorn Bitcoin into an exponential curve. Let's try to make it work exponentially to see how it would look. I've shown many charts of this, but let's take off exponential. There's power. It's a different zoom. It's not going out to 2050, so it's a little bit different, but still looks fast, but it's not the hockey stick that an exponential will give you. All right. Now let's go log. Let's take off the evolvings. All right. You've seen this many times on another chart. I'll go back to that chart. Bitcoin is on power is a very smooth looking curve, slices through the data, just looks wonderful. Exponential is just not working. All right. Bitcoin has not hit the exponential curve. And by the way, this wasn't even the curve at the time. I'll show you what it was in the time in a second. Since spring 2022, 40K. You know, it's not on exponential. If it was on exponential, the price would be 600,000 at the moment, or somewhere close to that. It's just not on that curve. It's not there. Now let's show how these two things evolved. Okay, so the evolving gives you the squiggly lines. All right, we go back here, here. You know, remember, I keep everything relative to a multiple over under trend. See in the tooltip, these multiples never change. I want to see exactly how the multiples look relative to the trend. That's how I like to look at it. All right. So with Apple, similar with Bitcoin, the 60th percentile is about 1x. Bitcoin is a little bit well, let's just show you what it is for Bitcoin. Yeah, actually rounds to the same, 60th percentile, 1x the trend. Okay, so that's a nice consistency. All right, so let's look at evolving power versus evolving exponential. Okay, I'm going to take off the. Notice how there's no discrepancy in the future. That's what it would project to. But as the base gets set, as the data gets set, let's see how they evolve into what they became. Again, with my little. Ignore this. I was doing something goofy in my back end, and I don't know why. It doesn't matter. It's the same. I'm missing these days. Okay, so notice how the jury was clearly out here. All right. The curves look pretty much the same. No one would have known. I didn't know. No one would have thought that Bitcoin was going to do a power growth. It is notable that the guy who inspired me to do these charts a lot, it's a guy named Trololo Low on Bitcoin Talk. He came out maybe here with these sort of famous charts that showed Bitcoin was growing logarithmically, which is like explosive growth at the beginning and then levels out. Kind of like power, faster at the beginning, but not as explosive. It turned out that logarithmic wasn't the best fit, but anyway, that's what he figured out at this right around here. But notice that they're not far apart. All right, I mean, exponential certainly richer, right? I mean, this is still log scale, so in 2012 you'd have a $24 power curve price, $32 exponential price, but they're gonna diverge, as you can see. All right, as more and more data comes in. Okay, you still hit the old exponential idea, but they just become further and further apart. Again, apologies for this blank up here, but you can already extrapolate what's going to happen. It's nothing. It doesn't matter. Everything just moves it, and then we extrapolate out, and it's the same as the all-time. Okay. Same with power. So again, I'm trying to build the case for myself and for you. Never financial advice, but if you want to relax about all this stuff. And I'm not done. We're going to look at some trading ideas. Bitcoin is very unique. It's just not staying to an exponential pattern. It's not even, it didn't even hit it. It would not have hit. Now I should say that how do I want to say this? This is the slope and intercept resulting curve at any time. Of course, if we draw the all-time curve, it's going to look different. All right, so at the time, you'd have to use your imagination. I could make a movie of this maybe, but let's just leave exponential. Exponential is a straight line on log scale. So at the time, it's super ambitious, then it flattens out, just like the power curve did. But just imagine, you're imagining a straight line here, and this again, what you see is kind of like the tangent. It's where the exponential curve would be at any time when you looked at that price. So at 3rd of December 2015, the projected price of Bitcoin's data with all of its values on an exponential growth trend line would be $2,266. It's quite a bit higher than the actual price. And this is, by the way, about when people like myself, actually, no, not when myself. I realized it over here, somewhere in 2018. But, you would be quite forgiven to think that Bitcoin would be like every other asset and grow exponentially at this point. So, it's forming its base. But if you look over the long run, which is going to match this curve, it's actually always had to settle down. Other than the very initial growth, its exponential is completely getting pulled down all the time. Just like I say with the power curve, right? Every day that there's a green price, that is the shaded area, beneath the green line, it pulls the line down. Tries to make a better fit. But it's not a great fit. You can see 86% R squared, hasn't hit it since April 2022. And actually what that means is, this is what I wanted to talk about before. The exponential curve looked even completely different in April 2022. The green line, if you were to draw an all-time line at that time, would be way up here. It would be way sharper. All right. So again, not a great fit. Exponential curve would have predicted 155K. It looks more like stock to flow values. I'll come back to that chart. Then the power curve, by the way, which was damn near what the actual price was. Okay. And again, apologies for the blank. You can clearly see what's happening anyway. So at the end of the day, after you sort of do the analysis and you see what Bitcoin is actually doing, it's not doing exponential. It's not what it's doing. What do you mean, Daniel? Percent decrease in alt returns? I can get that chart. I'm not going to have it today, but I can definitely get it. Like if I did a altcoin exponential regression. I'll have to run it. I don't know the answer. I don't know the answer. But I was talking to a buddy. Let's keep going on this idea of exponential. Okay, so here's a Ray Kurzweil video on Peter Diamandis' channel, Singularity University. I just pulled this up because of the title, but you can. It has the word power there, but it's about exponential growth in the singularity. Now he's been talking about this for a long time, like long time. His singularity kind of became popular, 15 years ago. You can find videos of him then showing exponential curves all over the place, which is true. Like this: price performance of computation, population growth, a lot of things in nature, and of course the markets, GDP, they all move in exponential. So it also makes sense to think that things are going to move exponential into the future. But here's where I really wonder if Bitcoin has the power to change people's ideas here. Let me tell you what I mean. Here's another chart. All right, buddy did this, a trading buddy. For the 1000th time, I'm not an Elliott wave, ABC correction, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's just, to me, I've heard it so much on gold podcasts and they were always wrong, their forecasts. So I don't think about it much. But this is Bitcoin's price on log scale. Clearly you see it's on log scale. And he's trying, I think without knowing, to shoehorn an exponential channel onto Bitcoin. Doing this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, these impulses. Again, I'm not even commenting on that. It's not the point. Again, why is the 5 here and not here? I'm not a big Elliott wave person. This channel hasn't been hit, very similar to what I told you about with the exponential trend, since like 2022. So why this channel is relevant, and also look down here. I would, have questions about doing too much of this stuff. Making a clear disclaimer that I'm not a trader. I see when people make YouTube videos about trading, 50% of the time, maybe they're right, 50% wrong, maybe 51% right. 55% would be some amazing track record, I guess, as I understand probabilities of these models. I'm still trying to, let's relax in life, live our day to day, and not go too crazy with the theories. A lot of people think in exponential, and they don't even know that they're thinking in exponential. It's just, that's because every asset in history has moved that way. GDP has done it, debt, population growth on a worldwide level, not on a city level, by the way, that moves in power, but on a worldwide level. There's so many things that move in exponential. You can be forgiven to thinking that Bitcoin's going to move in exponential. But the really interesting thing is that it's not. It's moving in a different way. Am I 100% sure that this curve is going to hold into the future and it's just going to grow like this in dollar terms? Of course not. I have no idea. I make the same disclaimer right here. You're saying this predicts the future? No. Of course, models tell us projections. They give us a statistical prediction. But that's a very statistical word when I say that. I have no idea. I'm just trying to take comfort in what I see. And what I see is this. All right. Which can have huge variations, by the way. I mean, let's just look. We've done this before, this analysis. Between the 1 and the 9. Between the 1 and the 9 here, you have $40,000 Bitcoin by the end of the year. And $250,000 Bitcoin. That's quite a delta. But I do not see this. This is what Apple's doing. And if you look at this 0th percentile, it looks pretty far off, right? 100th, pretty far off. This is similar analysis applies. It's just a different base. It's a different trend line. Looks exponential. In fact, the R-squared tells us it's exponential. So it's kind of my thesis. Good morning, MP. Good morning. Sort of my thesis that to help us keep a cool head here. Whether people sort of know it or not, they're thinking in terms of exponential, in terms of Bitcoin, but it's just not doing that. Again, let's go back to this chart. Very simple. And even with the evolving coefficients now. Let's take this off because this is distracting because the exponential is so wild, right? But let's look here, right? Okay, so exponential is pretty close, but now as we move through this top, exponential has very high predictions. And they only get farther away. This is the predicted price, what you see, the green play button. And the predicted price, all right, let's take it off the alt. This is all time. Gives us a nice smooth curve. But as it evolves, of course, it's different. So we just see, this is the clearest signal I can show you that these things get farther and farther apart. Again, apologies for the blank, but farther and farther apart. As of today, they're $500,000 apart. Now, I guess to really nail this home, and I don't have this chart ready, I could show you Apple in power and show you how it's not doing that. It's just clearly not. Apple is, even though it's a network, it's growing exponential. It's growing as a straight line on log scale. So I really would try to take comfort in that. Let's see if I can get the gaps out. That's annoying to me too. Sure it is to you. One second. All right, something in my code. I don't know. They're not coming off. Doesn't matter. You can extrapolate. There's nothing. It's the correct calculations, but there's. I told it to back off on those dates. Whatever. You can clearly see that power looks really, really good. It just looks really, really good for Bitcoin. Like, it's very explanatory of what Bitcoin is doing. Exponential is not explanatory. It's not telling us what it's doing. And as it evolves, it even looks sort of goofier, right? You got this kink. Maybe this is why I hit it, is because we, I don't know why. Anyway, we got this big kink here in exponential growth. So the point is to try to take some comfort in the fact that Bitcoin has not looked even close to exponential, even on a, let's now look at let's go back and do this. Okay, so yes, over the all time, we would have crossed it here, solid green line, right? Spring of 2022, but actually we didn't hit an exponential trend line on the prediction from 2017. It's been 8 years. It's been 8 years since the Bitcoin price has hit what the predicted exponential trend based on the data says that it would do. 7 years. About to be 8. About to be 8 years. That is remarkable. So again, if you see like 1,000 YouTube videos with the ABCs and the Elliott waves and the 1, 2, 3 correction, ABC correction, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 waves, which again, I've heard this 1,000 times on the gold podcasts. Maybe they're having their day in the sun now. I don't know. I can always be wrong. But Bitcoin's just not doing that. It's not working like a normal stock. Normal stocks have a very specific, very easy to point out exponential growth, i.e. a straight line on log scale. So what did let's see if I want to say anything else here. The Ray Kurzweil, I check it out. Search back for his like singularity stuff. This is another thing, just philosophically. Ray Kurzweil is famously, he says he wants to speak to his father again. He has, like in an AI form, he has all sorts of memorabilia and data and bits and bytes that he's planning on sort of bringing his father back to life. This is what he said a lot in the Singularity movie, which is interesting, super interesting. I'm just curious. Maybe Bitcoin's such a strong technology. So far, it's clearly ignoring the laws of finance. Let's say it's ignoring the laws of finance by growing the way that it's growing. But maybe it's such a strong technology that it can change everybody's ideas of what's going to happen here. And by the way, it's not bad if Bitcoin doesn't, because then going back to this chart, if Bitcoin fails into exponential, it's going to fail upward, not downward. All right, so let's get that back in. This is the same chart I just showed you, but with more curves, right? So here's that old exponential. If we drew it all time, it's here, but actually, as I just told you, it didn't even hit. If we did a real exponential curve at the time with the price hitting it at the time, it would have been here in 2017. Because remember, in 2022, it actually did not hit the projected price. Okay, this is just, if you have to draw a line through it, you do it, but it's going to fall down as more data. Hope that makes sense. I could do a movie of this, but the curve falls down as more data is coming. Point is, I've said it 1,000 times, exponential is not the right trend. But if for whatever reason Bitcoin turns into an exponential, so here's the power, and I drew these two trend lines recently. All right, if power turns into expo in 2025 versus 2035, let's look at 2025. And let's take off the power trend. If it starts to turn into a straight line at the point with what it is growing, which is 42% a year, then it will start to look like this, which certainly looks more sustainable than this curve. This just doesn't make any sense. But this, maybe this happens. So if Bitcoin sort of fails in this power curve trend math, it will fail into an exponential, which might not be a bad thing. It could be bad because it could, like I've said 1,000 times, it could be that, you know, everybody's taking debt on Bitcoin, endless fiat currency units stacked up, you know, collateralized, you know, the debt drawn on limited Satoshi collateralized debt, but endless fiat currency units with interest. You get booms and busts, you get all that. We could get it. But actually, that portends a higher Bitcoin price over the long term than the power curve. Because the power curve gives us our nice, beautiful, sustainable curve, which doubles with every 12.7% increase in the life of Bitcoin. And this would just turn into a constant exponential growth if it did, which at the moment is 42% per year. All right. And then I did it on 2035 for illustration. It's an even milder trend because the power trend decreases. All right, so we can imagine maybe it turns into an exponential trend in 2035. And I think the slope here is like 24% per year. This could happen. And then, if that happens, then, okay, maybe we'll start to get back into these channels. You can try to run Elliott waves on it, or maybe it looks more like this. And again, I'm not a statistician. I haven't spent my whole life studying these curves, but exponential curves are more volatile. They cause booms and busts. They cause endless amounts of fiat interest, you know, on top of perhaps not justified growth, right? But so far, Bitcoin is not doing any of that. Bitcoin is not exponential. So that's my message of this video before I take off for a couple days is I really think you can take comfort in this. Yeah, we can have crazy, there could be just crazy news. Maybe Bitcoin falls back down to the one, right? I'm not going to tell you where the price is going, but we can look at the curve and we look at statistically where the one would be at the end of the year. And then we can see where the price has been over the last year. Seems hard to believe. We'll go back to, but maybe by the end of 2026, maybe 2027, it goes back to the one. Not concerned. Good question. Love the love your handle, by the way. What has been Giovanni's thoughts about like this month? Again, you guys got to tell me because I'm immersed in my own work and I don't follow everybody else as much as I should perhaps. But what has Giovanni been saying about like what he thinks would happen right now? Because I'll just stick to what I've been saying. Yeah, it's been different, but I'm just not going to discount that we don't hit the 9 again because we hit it every prior 4 years. Or let's say at least the 8. And so we haven't hit the 8 yet. Doesn't mean we have to hit the 8, but like this is just sort of the basic caveman math that I'm following, the 4-year cycle. It's a nice, pretty, sustainable trend. So what is Giovanni saying? Is he saying it's... I'm curious if he thinks there'll be as big of a bump. I'll see him next week anyway. So, or no, actually this week. Sorry. Good question, Jimi Hendrix. I don't think I said that, but I did see this, which was funny. Right, the power of exponential growth. He's talking about exponential growth. So to be very clear, exponential is actually more powerful than power. All right. You can see that here. If you just had a power curve, if you had the power curve, it looks like this on log linear, not a straight line. On log, straight line. But that's the different thing. Power curve, as you can see, is sustainable. It slows down actually as we grow. Exponential does not. Exponential keeps on trucking at the same percentage. So exponential, and I think this lingo that you're using, is more powerful. It's stronger. Also, exponential is what everything, literally everything in the financial world moves on. You know, compound growth, interest rates, yield to maturities, IRR, anything. Anytime you see a rate, that's a constant exponential rate. Of course, your annual return moves all over the place, right? You could have a investment that cash flows you 15% one year, then 7% the next, and whatever. But over time, it's going to get to some level. Just like Apple, over time, gets you to this level. And by the way, this trend could break. I mean, it could move to a different level of exponential, but so far, this is what it's on. I'm not as high tech as the Jim Simon types. R.I.P. Who I think Jim Simons was a very probably did a lot for the industry that people haven't fully understood. I shouldn't say it like that. I mean, he did well and made a lot of money, gave it away, and he was. I think, again, not ever met him or anything, but I think what they were doing was just this stuff. At some level, just finding the trend, getting a level, and then seeing where was the price. Was it over, under, bet, take chips off the table, bet. And like seriously hardcore about their statistics. That's what he did. So, again, I tend to ramble on these answers, but exponential is more powerful. But, and this is a broader discussion on what power growth means. And so see Jeffrey West's book, Scale, because that's the best explainer, I think, of sort of the differences. Exponential curves can become very volatile. And we have to, in fact, what we have done always in history is we've moved on to faster and faster and faster exponential curves. So I'll show you. So here's the S&P 500. I've shown this a lot, right? But you've seen this probably. This is exactly called Jeffrey West's super exponential theory, where, you know, if I wanted, I could draw one trend line from 1800 to today. It would probably be somewhere close to the black. I don't know. But you just imagine one trend line. But actually what we have is we have these growing trends. So we have here, decent trend. This, and I just started this. It's kind of arbitrary, but kind of not. So the start of the Federal Reserve, I started the next one until 1971. Goes faster, you know, with huge volatility in between. Great Depression. 1971 grows faster with a big dot-com boom, and then the 2008 global financial crisis to finish it off. And then from the GFC, I have this one, which grows faster, which is weirdly starts below the last one because it was such a, I mean, not weirdly, I picked the date, but for sure, 2008 was a paradigm shift. Like there was a lot more money printing. There was a lot more, everything changed about the nature of a crisis and what the government would do to react to a crisis. So it's interesting that I've used the analogy of like a car revving it up, sliding down a muddy hill. Like we were going this fast, and then because we started to slip on our own vices, perhaps, I don't know, we now have to rev it up even faster. But we're actually not going anywhere. We will finally catch that curve in like 20, somewhere here. We catch it in like 20 years from now. it's totally possible, by the way, that by 2030 we have another crisis, and then we go even faster out of that. So this is super exponential growth. This is a completely, so notice, by the way, how these, look at the CAGR, compound annual growth, it increases. Low CAGR here, faster and faster CAGR. We got up to 11.6% in the last 15 years. And that's without dividends reinvested. Bitcoin moves in the complete opposite direction. So it's kind of a mind warp, or you can use a worst word. Let me show you. Hello, Michael. These charts are not. This is all locally drawn by me. I have, at the moment, used to have more, trying to get them back up on my site. I have just these. So you can see them all here. The power growth. And I have a lot of other charts on the money supply, Bitcoin versus world assets, all the dollar figures, all the native figures. You can find all where Bitcoin sort of fits in the picture. But this is what I wanted to show you is, so we have the super exponential growth, which Jeffrey West talks about, right? Faster and faster exponential. But Bitcoin is just giving everybody, is throwing everybody for a loop. Is the price grows and pretty fast at the moment, but that will slow. That will slow. Right. We've had crazy. This is the green is the actual trailing 12-month growth. So crazy. Certainly volatile. Notice how the volatility's come way down. And then the dotted line is the trailing 12-month on the regression, on the curve itself. So we come way down. So notice this curve. Now I'm looking at this curve. All right, Bitcoin's trailing 12-month or CAGR, same thing basically. You know, we're at 42% right now, or moving to 42% by the end of the year. Right on 42% by the end of the year. That's the complete opposite direction of what this does. These CAGRs, I need to actually show it graphically so you see the, think of the number 2 if it was charted, then the number 4.8, 9.6. You have a staircase moving up of exponential CAGRs, and Bitcoin goes the other way. So this is also another question that I would have outstanding. I have this going all the way out, by the way, just so you can see the progression, like way out here in the future. You know, $1 billion Bitcoin. This shouldn't be on 2 decimals. That's kind of annoying. When our projected 21 million hits, we're at 4.5%. We hit 10% in 2070. And in 2035, where I told you I said perhaps we switch into exponential, is 24.7%. So that's when I did this. When we maybe turn into expo growth, say 2035 or 2025 could be faster. Right. I'm trying to put a lot of questions out there, but also answer some, right? So clearly we're just not here. We're not here. You see Elliott waves of how did I take that chart off? Anyway, you see Elliott waves with channels on exponential, straight line on log scale stuff. Bitcoin's just not doing that. Even though Bitcoin has had a softer ride this cycle, it's still a power trend ride. The roller coaster hasn't changed. I mean, it's like the fundamental foundation of the roller coaster is still power. So I do think it's you know, I haven't fleshed out the thesis, but what happens when, say, you know, you guys tell me what you think, but The stock market over the last 15 years has gone 11.6% on a trend. It's right here. By all indications, we might have a crisis, and then we print more money, and we go even faster because of the money printing. So it could be, so let's just leave it here. Let's say it's 11.6% for a long time. When would Bitcoin hit 11.6% on the power curve? Right there. Not till 2062. But based on this is going to probably be faster than 11.6% by 2032 with the nature of exploding super exponential growth, as Jeffrey West calls it. So the stock market's probably going to even grow faster and faster and faster. So my ultimate sort of question of the power curve thesis is what happens when these Kagers meet? Is it the singularity? Like, does the what happens when these worlds collide? Because there are very few assets today that even touch it, assuming their current growth, right? So let's look at this one now. So just repeat that. If the stock market is running at 11.6% CAGR, and let's even add 2%, because if you reinvest the dividends, you usually add 2%. So let's say 13, 14% CAGR. Let's even say 14% CAGR. When does Bitcoin hit 14% CAGR? 2050. You know, maybe I should have a term for this date, but I think it's like the singularity. I mean, it's a funny way to say it, but at this date, something would break because you would either, first of all, why would you hold an awesome asset, awesome as it is, if it's growing in power, but its return is actually slowing, versus go back into like Apple, if its return is straight line, powerful compound growth? Sorry, I have your, this goes back to this question. Okay, so let me put this back on. Now I have the Kagers. I don't have the market cap of the S&P, unfortunately, but and there's actually nothing close here. The closest is world-based money itself as far as the growth rate. See, 8.2%. Bitcoin easily hawks these things, even on the sustainable power curve by the mid-2030s, early 2040s. It's going to happen. I'm pretty confident these trends continue. But you don't have to be a calculus genius to know that if there's a straight line and there's a curved line, the fastest way between 2 points is the straight line. So like at some point, this will actually come back down and get flipped again. I'm not saying that's actually going to happen. What I'm saying is it's weird to think about, right? Like, of course, we'll be on a Bitcoin standard. Life will be different. You know, if any of us are break the matrix by then, but and still hanging around. But, you know, it's really interesting questions, I think, that are going to be maybe not resolved, but come to the fore in the next 10, 15 years. Like Bitcoin's going to catch the value of all of these systems. Gold, which is way above trend right now. Base money's way below trend. U.S. Treasuries, right on trend. There's U.S. Treasuries. United States debt, crossing at that mythical 100 trillion by 2040. The only one, interestingly, is Apple. So Apple, I've shown this before, so far is outstripping it. I don't think this is relevant to anything, frankly, but this is where you can see these CAGRs start to matter, right? So if Bitcoin is 40% now, growing fast, it catches Apple. But if Apple stays at that 23.2% CAGR, which is the slope of this exponential trend line, straight line on log scale, then, you know, either Apple needs to start adopting Bitcoin and pull into power, or Bitcoin has to be adopted by the TradFi world and pull itself into exponential. Because this doesn't really make any sense. I mean, just doesn't make any sense that we have this divergence. My point is, Bitcoin is doing something that the rest of the financial world is just not doing. It does not look like a straight line on log scale. It is not doing exponential. Maybe it does exponential in the future. But I don't think we're there yet. Good morning. Well, don't focus on crypto, just focus on Bitcoin. Let me know if any other questions, guys. I need to more flesh out the thesis, the ideas, but and I'll have some more ideas for you, by the way, next week after I go to this conference. But there's no asset in the financial world that grows like this. It's just not. It's a nice, beautiful, sustainable growth curve. The internet grows this way. Cities grow this way. And Bitcoin grows this way. But the rest of the financial world goes in these wild straight lines that are often filled with booms and busts. And notice the outlier there. Apple is just a gangbuster stock from its two. And by the way, this trend I start, again, somewhat arbitrarily, but I started at the beginning of Bitcoin's life. So this probably has a different. Let's look at the trend. Wait. Yeah, that's the trend. So it's market cap. I can't directly compare it to the price one, but this is the best fitting expo trend to Apple. It goes back to 2005. It's going to be a little bit better even than this trend. So what's the takeaway? Own Apple and Bitcoin? Maybe. Not financial advice, but these CAGRs are much slower. And they're very easy for Bitcoin to catch. Although I will say the broad money is kind of confusing because I need to go back and get different data for that because I think this is actually low. This is only the top 5, by the way. This is top 5 currencies. Dollar, yuan, euro, yen, pound sterling. It's closer to 150 trillion right now in broad money. And theoretically, this is another weird philosophical exercise, but theoretically, Bitcoin shouldn't even pass this one. It's just, there's broad money and base money. Bitcoin is analogous to base money. So here's broad money and base money. Also weird. Broad money grows very slow, at least on a trend from what the data that I have. It's going to change. It's going to go faster. Broad money is not going to be below base money. So let's just leave these three. This is the most analogous money supply to Bitcoin. All their trend lines. They can be volatile. Gold's way over trend. See that? Gold's 10 trillion over its trend line. We talked about this yesterday. It's in the top end of its exponential channel. I think Bitcoin can easily catch all of these based on how it grows in the next 10 to 15 years. So again, Bitcoin could fall back. Maybe this is the top. I have no idea. I just have no idea. But it's certainly in the richer levels. Okay. But we haven't hit the 8. We haven't hit the 9, which we've hit in every prior cycle, if you're grounded in the power trend. And I'm not ready to discount that yet. You guys do what you need to do, but hodling's never a bad idea. And the overarching message I wanted to send with this video before I travel is you're going to see a lot of charts, a lot of people doing Elliott waves or, I don't know, exponential channels on whatever Bitcoin's doing, and Bitcoin's just not doing that. It's actually not. The physics of Bitcoin, to use a Giovanni and money or debt term, is completely different. So I would take comfort in that fact. And we're just going to have to see. I think it's going to be an exciting fall. The market is highly geared. But we're right on trend. Overall, you draw that trend line, we're still right on trend. Any other questions, guys? You still get amazing numbers, by the way, if you stick on power, right? You get to 23 plus by 2050 million. Of course, it's not like not exponential numbers. But that's because Bitcoin's not on an exponential trend. For the newcomers, I'll leave you with one more here. We'll just do them all again. Plan B, stock to flow stuff, is not correct because, first of all, it's not scale invariant. You can't pick a point and show what's happening proportionally. He's using a power curve, by the way, for these blue lines. And these red lines are me, but he's using the blue. He's using a power curve. So scale invariance, like I said, you can pick any point on an exponential trend, measure the slope, and 12.7, 12.8%, which you can see here. All the calculations on my website, 12.7, 12.8% increase in the life of Bitcoin will double the trend line. That's what it does. So we have scale invariance. You can do that anywhere. With a stair step, with a stock to flow model, you just not scale invariant. That's the first problem. Second problem is he's using exponential coefficients on a power curve model, even though this is not a power curve, these blue lines. So he's throwing in like gold, silver, platinum, palladium. Incorrect. His 2020 model's way off. And by the way, look at the difference between his 2020 and 2019 model. Nearly 6 million projected for today by the 2020 model. See you later. 757,000 projected for today by the 2025. Now, this is a 4-year model, so you do inherently, you might line up with the booms, right? And it's far from a, by the way, your model should not predict, and I guess it would be good if it did predict the booms, but it's arbitrary. Like here it peaked before the boom, right? Before the boom, it peaked in 2017. And then it flattens out. And here it peaked after the boom because we came early in 2017. I'm not saying that the power trend catches the ups and downs, but that's just how it goes. So we might coincidentally hit this 2019 number. Actually, no, it's impossible by the end of the year. Remember, my numbers are 2 to 3x the power trend. Power trend's 125. That's 250 to 375. Absolute max. And probably too optimistic. Anyway, those go away. And then let's look at if you just use stock to flow data, okay, which is what I'm doing here. No gold, silver, exponential coefficients, which is insane to use in a power model. You still get variances based on 2016. So if you go back to 2016 and you ran a stock to flow power trend on a stock to flow ratio, which doesn't really make any sense. As I've said, it's not scale invariant. And then you run it for the all-time data, which is here. Whoops, sorry, here. 2016 is dotted. You have a big discrepancy. Your $200,000 difference. All right, so running a power trend on stock to flow data gets you 350 projected today. If you used only up until 2016 days, you get 576. Now let's compare that with the actual power curve. Boom, boom. You can barely see the difference. All right. Price today around 112 when I pulled it into the model. All-time power curve 116. It's my curve. Some people have different curves. If you had only projected out, if you'd only taken up to 2016's pricing data of Bitcoin and then projected it forward, and I said all things started to really become clear about the power curve for Bitcoin in 2016, you'd be only 7K off. Actually 6K, 6,000. $6,000 difference. It's an incredible, incredible display of a trend, of what Bitcoin is actually doing. So I would say take great comfort in that. Don't, nobody knows the future. I don't know the future. I'm not a trader, not a swing trader, but this black line looks a hell of a lot better than the stair-step shoehorned stock to flow model. It's a hell of a lot better than an exponential model, straight line on log scale. It's a hell of a lot better than Plan B's models. All right, so we take all that off, and you're left with, if Bitcoin was exponential, it would just you'd get crazy, silly season numbers. It'd be fun, but I don't think so. And then you'd get to where we can start to go back to this chart, and you take the rainbow. You take the deviations from the trend to see where we could go. So Long and short, take a lot of comfort in that. That's my message before I sign off for a few days. We could have drops. We could have more drops. We could go down to the one. I have no idea. It could be the top. I have no idea. But, you know, if past this prologue, we have at least a year before the drop bottoms out. And a year from now, that's 56K on the one. Bitcoin is not growing exponential. So any Elliott waves, ABC corrections, stay in the channel. I mean, I know people, like to do those to try to make money short term. Have at it. I'm not that interested in that stuff. I can just tell you that's not what Bitcoin is doing over the long term. It is not on an exponential trend like every other stock, which Elliott wave and ABC corrections are typically applied to. Bitcoin has a nice, gentle slope on log scale. It does not go exponential. All right. I'm trying to be dramatic before I sign off, guys, but I got to sign off. This is an exponential trend. This is Apple. Maybe Bitcoin turns exponential in the future, but if it does, it's going to be a much softer curve than this green line, right? Just not going to be on that green line. Might be one of these purple lines. So it drops off. And this is the nice thing about the power trend. If the power trend fails, it's not going to fail down. It's going to fail up. It's going to turn into an exponential, which is a straight line on log scale. But it hasn't failed yet. And let's not get too worried about it amidst all the news and the ABC corrections. Thank you, Daniel. I hope you guys enjoy this. I hope you I do this for my own sanity as well. You can find all the data here. I need to get more charts on here. Eventually I will, but BTC Pay service here. No subscriptions required. Any sats you can send over Lightning Network as well. Always appreciated. And that's it, guys. It's going to be a fun fall if you're in the Northern Hemisphere. It's going to be interesting. Last one. We have, again, not a prediction, but I would be shocked if we didn't get at least above the 8 by the end of the year. And the 8 is 168. Maybe that will prove to be the range of the top. Maybe. But I would be shocked if we didn't at least hit that, because we easily cleared that in every prior cycle. All right. Never financial advice. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, everybody, for watching. I'll talk to you guys in a few days, next week. Take care.